Jerninger, your tour guide into discoveries. Coming to you live simulcast from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web, terrestrial radio, satellite, and podcast. Let's journey together into the realms of the unknown to the known in search of enlightenment, knowledge, and truth.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. I am here in the heart of America, broadcasting live and heard on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Studio B also being simulcast at wolfspiritradio.com and heard at journeyswithrebecca.com. We've got a phone ringing. There we go.
Yes.
Hello. Yes. Hang on there. We've got Robert with us. Hang on, everyone. And tonight, hello, welcome. And my guest, as you can well see, is Robert Morning Sky. JP will also is going to be joining us. He's not only the engineer, but he's also a co-host for this show tonight. It's going to be a really, really fun show. It's going to be a lot of information again with Mr. Robert Morning Sky on here. We're going to be exploring some of the information. We're going to be talking about his Terra papers. We're also going to be talking a little bit more about the history of womankind. And the beginning topic, so to speak, for this show tonight is going to be addressing Lilith, who she really was, and the story behind that, which has been hidden. So again, we're going to be talking about that, and also the Lost History of Womankind, which is the latest book that Robert has out. It's the first in a series, a trilogy that's coming out. Also would like to remind people that the radio stations are commercial free and listener supported, so please do use the donation button found at Wolf Spirit Radio and the support button found at freedomslips.com. And be sure to sign up for my free and confidential newsletter at my website. That's journeyswithrebecca.com. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and welcome officially Robert Morning Sky to the show. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rebecca.
Oh, I'll tell you what, this is just too fascinating. And, you know, we've already approached you, Robert. I wrote you an email a couple of days ago about setting up, several of these shows, and we're going to be also doing them on some Friday nights, but we're also going to be including some Monday night shows in our conversations with you, JP and myself, because of the history, because of your unique history, as you have traveled the world gathering information, as told to you by the elders, and I think it's another view that needs to be looked at. It's controversial, to be sure, and I'm all about that, especially when it allows you to challenge yourself and you have to think about all the things that we know of in our everyday world that the truth has been hidden from us. It's in our history books, especially here in the United States. Children learn the history, and we know it's not accurate, yet they keep teaching the same thing to our children, and we get older and adults, and we have to go back and unlearn all that history, and we have to learn some new history as it really is. And we're making new and new discoveries every day. So our history changes and alters, it broadens as we get more and more information, and people such as yourself that seek and research and put together all of this information. And I am just extremely excited and happy to have you on the show. I know JP is, so that we can explore some of this maybe very much unknown to most of the general public.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. As I said earlier in one of our conversations, private conversations, very brave lady. Thank you, and JP as well, because I have actually, in the last year, reached out to other talk show hosts, especially conferences, and I get rejected or I get dismissed because my work generally runs contrary to what I want to call the party line or the standards. So, I appreciate, I really, really do thank you for the opportunity to be with you, and to have a semi-regular forum would be outstanding. So, to the two of you, thank you very, very much.
Oh, hey, listen, first of all, Robert, I just kind of want to share this with the audience. It's people like you that make me do what I do. Seriously, because this is information, and whether people agree with it or not, it's not important. It is a different viewpoint. It is a different perspective. And, for the more we can widen ourselves, the more we can, think about things and explore them, we can certainly do our own due diligence and find out whether or not any information is accurate for us, whether it's shared by you or anybody else. So, it's people like you that make me want to continue to do this show even after all these years that I've been doing it. It's exciting for me. So, thank you for that. JP, good evening.
Hello. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Oh, your speakers are on.
Yeah. I'll just say what I say, and then I'll fade out again, so you don't echo. I'm good here, and greetings, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, sir, for having me with you.
Well, I think we were talking last couple of weeks, Rebecca, about what we were going to speak with Robert about, and one of the things we just reeled off a whole list, and I said, well, that'll do, as if we could remember what that all was. But I know, one of the things, the thing that turned me on to Robert's stuff in the first place was the Terror Papers, and so the ancient history. I've seen a few video recordings of you. And you're very entertaining, I have to say. It's very entertaining. You're kind of dancing around the stage, and it was a very. You brought it all to life in a joyous way, and it was really good to watch. So my interest is kind of in going a little deeper into the personality and characters of these people that Beck T was talking about, and also the bigger overview of where planet Earth is. I mean, here's another thing: is like in terms of the stars that we know and see, how do we relate in terms of, we've heard that the Pleiades is the center of our solar system. Our sun is it rotates around Alcyone, and have you got details of like our local star group and how we relate in that way? So at once it's ancient, and another it's kind of more solar. Kind of perspective that I would love to hear from you about. Does that make sense? Or that's where I'd like to go with you. Where Rebecca goes with you, well, that's her stuff. But that's my particular interest.
Well, maybe Robert, you can do both of those things tonight. As I stated in the beginning, that was just one. Lilith was one of the topics, and I think the question, the curiosity and the question that JP has is also, is like he was telling you and the audience, just so that everyone knows, is when JP and I got together and, we got so excited about all the information that we could, go by topic. The list is endless, Robert. You're just obviously you need to be known for the research and the effort and the work that is coming forward, and I'm excited to hear about it. So I think those two topics, if you're comfortable with both of them, you can just start with whichever one you want, and there we'll go.
Oh, yes. Again, thank you. There are so many different directions that my research went. Very briefly, I mean, the questions, what you're asking, what we've talked about in the past, began for me actually when I was a child. I grew up with my grandfather, my Apache grandfather. He had distinguished himself in World War I and was given some government land, and he turned it into a sanctuary essentially for Native Americans from any tribe, from any nation, to come and stay with him. And there would oftentimes be elders who would come and visit with him. They would take me out into northern Arizona to various sites, and I was able to grow up listening to the stories from the different tribes. And in addition, I would say that there were some gentlemen, some elders from Mexico, brujos they're called, sorcerers I guess is the best word, and they would come up. And so I mean, some of my earliest memories are lying on the ground in front of one of the fires, listening to the various elders talk about one subject or another, and they would all, take turns talking about what they had learned or what their particular elders had held on to. And so perhaps the most common theme was about the stars and star beings, the Hopi Kachinas, the Navajo Diné, the Apache Guns dancers, and on and on. And so I grew up with the concept of star beings constantly, and never had any doubt, never had any question. And one of my most vivid memories that brought all of this to reality, brought it to life for me, was a night that I spent in northern Arizona on a hillside. And I fell asleep listening to my grandfather, and when I awoke sometime in the middle of the night, he actually woke me up, and he said, look, they're here. He's talking to me in Spanish, and he said, they're here, los bailadores, the dancers. And I looked up in the sky, and there were some stars. Now, they were not streaking straight across as in a meteorite, that you would see in the sky. These lights were swirling and dancing and moving around, up and down, back and forth, and I just, I was, what is that? I'd never seen anything like that, of course. And he explained to me that these were star warriors. They were dancers in the sky. And I think what sealed my fate was that he said that it is possible for me someday to become a star warrior, to dance in the stars. And that was it. That was it. I wanted to do that forever. And so as I grew, when I went to university, I think as I told you last time, I went into the university, and that's when I first began to challenge my beliefs, my thoughts that my grandfather had implanted in my head. It was like, maybe he's wrong. There are so many other religions that talk about star beings and gods and all that. And it wasn't a difficult time. It was a challenging time, and thank goodness for the stacks and stacks of books in the library. And I'd spent my 4 years doing my research, and that's where I wrote my thesis on Terra, the hidden history of Earth. But when I graduated, when I left, I wanted to know, was my grandfather right? Were the stories about star beings in any particular religion or any particular native region of the world, were they accurate? Was I wrong? Was I accurate? Were they wrong? And as part of this, I never let go of the idea that I wanted to dance on the star. And so very, very early, I pursued both. I continued with my research and doing the dancing, and that actually gave me the opportunity to go to Africa, to go to Australia, to go to Europe, and all around the United States. And I could dance in ceremonies and rituals. I could dance in powwows. I could also put on dance performances for non-natives, for people who wanted to hear the myths and legends and wanted to see the dancing. And so, yes, absolutely, JP. I mean, it is very, very hard for me on a stage to be telling stories and not dance, not to move around. In fact, I have to tell you, these next couple of hours sitting in a chair is it's a task. I promise you, it's a really difficult task to sit here. In fact, I have a headset on, and I will probably get up and walk around because I'm not used to standing still. I've done conferences where they put a podium in front of me, and I said, no, this isn't going to work. So, by wanting to be a dancer, by looking for the research, by speaking with elders, by traveling the globe and putting all these pieces together, in Switzerland, in Europe. I met a group of elders that I actually met a gentleman who put me in touch with elders, and they launched me on this path. The thesis that I had started so many, many years ago, the hidden history of humankind, of Earth, became the hidden history of womankind. But it's about not only our history, our lost, and actually more accurately, our hidden history here on our Earth, on our world, but the history that really belongs to us about what it is in the stars. And so I'm extremely fortunate to be able to work with my elders, to be able to speak to. I've actually spoken to individuals who work with NASA. I've spoken to doctors. I've talked to astronomers, anthropologists. I've worked with rangers, archaeologists in these ruins and that, and getting pieces from what might be considered to be the ancient world, the ancient native world, the ancient historical world, and even modern-day science and modern-day physicists and astronomers. And by putting all these pieces together, they fit. It is remarkable how they fit. The problem, what brought me to where I am now, is that I discovered that the lost history of humankind is actually the lost history of womankind. And the task before me, Native people across the globe are trying to preserve their culture, rightfully so. Native Americans, natives from Africa, Europe, South America, rightfully so. We need to preserve our culture and our ways. And the elders that I am now honored to work with and to be with, I want to preserve their culture. And the task in front of me is difficult in this regard. The modern day religion's way of life, the belief, but especially the more established institutions that we call religion, are misogynistic, meaning they don't like women. Their task is to keep women in their place. I'm perhaps oversimplifying, but I don't believe inaccurately when I say religion, that one of the most basic foundation points of religion is to keep women in their place. And the character of Lilith, which you and I talked about, Rebecca, and I think is a really good example of how womankind has been portrayed as being evil, demonic, and cunning, and sly, and deceitful. I would like to talk to you and to your listeners tonight about Lilith, but let me begin in this regard, okay? Just to make my point. Again, I will argue that the male god religions, their task, one of their foundation points, is keep women in their place. Now, I'm going to give you a very, very easy, simple example. If your listeners have the ability, please, go to your Bible real quick. Grab your Bible, go to chapter 3. And this is a chapter about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And this is where they get in trouble. Essentially, the story is that the serpent is very, very, terrible serpent. He goes into the garden, and he addresses Eve. He goes to her, and he tells her about the forbidden fruit on the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, this is the tree. And Eve partakes of the forbidden fruit. And God gets very upset. Eve then gives some of the fruit to Adam. They have broken the number one rule. Do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So as a result, there's the story everybody knows. Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. They had to suffer labors in the field for Adam when working, toiling by the sweat of his brow. Eve had to toil with labors in the delivery of children. And ultimately, the church has placed what they call an original sin on mankind. All human beings are born with original sin because of the fall of Adam and Eve. And the fall of mankind, of humankind, has always been placed on Eve. She was the one that listened to the serpent. She was the one that partook of the fruit. She was the one that gave it to Adam. So this has been used by early church fathers to say woman is at fault. Were it not for her temptation, were it not for her yielding to the serpent and then tempting Adam, women are bad. They caused the downfall of man. Okay? So, what if one day you have passed through the door into the next life, and you're in front of the pearly gates, and St. Peter is there, and he says, you know, I'll tell you what, I will let you in to heaven, but you simply have to pass a one-question true or false test. And this is his question. Now, you make it into heaven or not based on this question. The question is, did God kick out Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden because they ate the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? True or false? And ponder it. Did God kick out Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden because they ate of the fruit of the the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Invariably, people, well, maybe not the tree. Okay, let me simplify it, says St. Peter. Did God kick Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden? Okay? St. Peter wants to give you a chance. Did God kick Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden? Okay, what does it say? What does it say in the book of Genesis chapter 3? If you have a Bible or if you have a piece of paper, write down these last three verses of the chapter, 22, 23, and 24. Now, I'm going to quote from the St. James Version. I'm going to quote verses 22 and 23, and Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind reading 24 when I'm done. Okay?
Okay.
This is Book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 22, 23, 24. I'm going to read 22 and 23. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Verse 23. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. Now, there are several questions that from these first two verses. But now, would you read?
Are you still there, Robert? I lost you for a sec. Okay.
Yes,
So,
I'm sorry. Would you read verse 24?
Yes. Now, mine is the verbiage is slightly different than yours. I was following along, but mine reads this way: He drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed a cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life.
Okay. The essence is still there. The verbiage is accurate. Let me read the St. James Version, which is generally the one that most people know. Now, let me read that again. And the wording is essentially the same. But here's how it reads. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Now, listen very carefully, and I'm asking your listeners to take a look at the first few words of verse 24. So he drove out the man. In the Hebrew language of the Bible, the word used for man in verse 24 is Adam. Listen to it. Let me replace it and let me read it again. So he drove out Adam, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Rebecca, JP, and listeners, read that verse carefully. It says, so he drove out the man. Just verses earlier, Adam gives his wife the name Eve. This verse does not say that Eve was removed from the garden. It says, so he drove out Adam. Now, clearly, in later chapters, Eve, in chapter 4 and on, she's out of the garden. But let's make this point very clear. Scribes, early Bible scribes, had a problem. Whoever was writing it, chapter 3, made it very clear. Eve did not get driven out of the garden. Look at verse 23, just before it. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden. Both of these verses make it very, very clear it was Adam who was kicked out of the garden. And if Eve was responsible for tempting him and causing the fall of mankind, why doesn't it simply say, and Lord God sent Eve forth with Adam, so he drove out Eve with Adam, but it doesn't say that. This concept that Eve is responsible for the fall of man was created by scribes who realized, oops, we have to find a way to put women in their place. We need to control them. We need them to feel guilty. We need for them to take the rap. So just these two verses alone, ladies, listen carefully. Read that verse carefully. Go on the internet and look up original sin. And you're going to find that there are several scholars who are now saying that it's the sin of Adam. He was the one responsible for the fall of man. He's taking the rap by a lot of the scholars because they have read this verse very carefully. This is not my opinion. It is the work and the research of Hebrew scholars, Christian scholars who look at this verse and they say, oh, well, the Bible scribe forgot to put Eve in there. Oh, well, when they said man, it actually means both Adam and Eve, but that is not true. They are changing the verse that is written in the Bible. They are changing the Word of God. If it is the Word of God, then you take it for exactly what it says. Christian apologists, ladies, you have got to let go of this nonsense that Eve caused the fall of man. Absolutely wrong. The Bible makes my point. So, if you said God kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden on your true-false test by St. Peter, you ain't making it into the heaven. You're not going to make it. God didn't kick out Eve. Now, how much trouble am I going to get in for that simple statement? how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people professing to be Hebrew, professing to be Christian, or whatever other denomination. Oh, maybe I was right. I take that back.
I think you are. Yeah.
How many of these various ways of life, these disciplines, fault Eve and therefore fault women? And they say, oh, I believe in the Bible, the Word of God, etc. And then look at this verse. Look at what this verse says. He drove out the man. Last verse, chapter 3. Ladies, you have been handed a bill of goods, and you are not responsible for the fall of man. So, anyway, okay.
I absolutely love this. So you see, and as I was reading it, and I was reading it beforehand, and I read it, and I was like, it clearly states man. It clearly states that. And then when you go to chapter 4, at least in this Bible, it kind of skips over. There's some things missing. You can tell that it's not the Bible is not continuity driven. There seems to be a lot of breaks when they pick up from one chapter to the next. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. But a lot of those breaks and a lot of that missing text that would give it some continuity has been lost or by accident, like the IRS officials lost their emails. You have to read the news to know that one. But the point is, if this is the Word of God, then we must take it at face value and not try to, what God meant. You can't do that. You cannot. If this is the Word of God, read it exactly as it says, and it says he drove out the man. Now, okay. There are some people who say, well, you know what, Robert, you're anti-Christian. And, okay, let me, bear with me for a moment. Book of Matthew, chapter 23, verse 9. Words of Jesus. Chapter 23, Matthew, verse 9. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. This is Jesus talking. If you call anyone your father, you are breaking the words that Jesus laid on you and said you got to do this. Call no man your father. And any Christian, anybody who professes to believe in the Bible and calls their father, the man who gave them birth, if you call him father, you are committing a sin. You are breaking the word of Jesus. Book of Luke, chapter 14, verse 26. If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Jesus wants followers who hate their father, their mother, their wife, their children, their brothers and their sisters, and their own life. This is not something I'm making up. This is in the Bible. These are Jesus' words. And people profess, I'm a Christian with God, with Jesus, all things. Okay, then you better not call him Father, and you better hate everybody in your family. Book of Matthew, chapter 10, 34 and 35 verse. Think not I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Look at this. This is the man you profess to believe in, and you want to do his work. You want to follow in his footsteps. You want to believe in him. Then he came here to set father against daughter, against mother, against daughter-in-law. Look, if this is Christianity, then Christians cannot fault terrorists. They cannot fault criminals and serial murderers because they hate their mother, their father, their brother, their sister, their own life. They don't call the man who gave them birth father. And they come, just like Jesus, not to send peace, but a sword. Look, the Bible does have some very good stuff in it. I would be the first to say, yeah, there's some very, very good things in it. But one of the most amazing things that, excuse my words, one of the most amazing things that con men and people who commit fraud, one of the things they do, they tell you it's something that's true, and then they add something that is absolutely contrary to the point or what you are seeking. And this is what's happening. If you really are a Christian, then you had best adhere to these words. And if you don't, if you call the man who gave your birth father, you are an antichrist. If you don't hate your mother, father, brother, brothers, sisters, etc., you are an antichrist. And if you don't agree with Jesus that he came here to split the earth and not bring peace, then you are an antichrist. So, here's my position. Ladies, don't buy it. You're not guilty. I will argue that the point of religion in general, if they have a male God religion, it's about keeping you in your place. It's about making sure you do what what they want you to do, so that you will do what? Serve man. And if you do right, when you go into the afterlife, you can serve God. That's your task, according to male God religions. And what I am trying to say is, ladies, look, here's the problem with this, okay? And what I'm trying to present in the lost history of womankind is not another religion. It is not a mother goddess religion. It is not nothing like that. It is a way of life that says, you know what? It's freedom from religion. It's about pursuing your fire. It's about pursuing wisdom. It's about pursuing knowledge. It's about pursuing the truth, not what somebody up there in heaven is going, do this, don't do that, thou shalt and thou shalt not. You're not going to find that in the original ways of the Udugan shamaness women, which is the lost history of womankind. This is one that says, you have a mind, use it, question, challenge everything. You have a body, use it, be physically healthy, enjoy, travel, go and see and experience all those things that this most incredible body, what it can do. This is about freedom, and it is about earning a place in the stars next to your star ancestors. Yes, just like every other religion, and I said that wrong. Better than the religions that are out there. Better than some of this other stuff that's being expressed by other speakers. We have a chance to earn our place in the stars, to join our star ancestors, not by listening to somebody preach and tell us don't do this and don't do that, you have to do this, you have to believe, women, you're bad, guys, you need to serve God. No. I'm sorry, I am beginning to get a little upset here, because I am so disturbed by what has been professed to be religious truths, the way of God and the way of Christ and the way of some of these other teachers, and it's about keeping women in their place. Now, we talked about it in the last program, and I don't know if you want to pursue it at all. I can do it briefly, but as I said before, science has shown, medicine, doctors, and science has shown that every single male on this planet is an altered female. The star ancestors are females. And what I wrote, what seems like hundreds of years ago, what I wrote in the tarot papers is inaccurate. Because I also spoke about, well, this is what the legends say about these male gods and these male beings that came down from the stars, and they taught us and they showed us and all of that. I was wrong. They weren't males. They were females. Star women. Those are our ancestors, star women. Those are our mothers, our sisters, our wives, and our daughters. You are star women. And men have been trying for thousands of years to control you and to gain and acquire the fire, the power that you have. I feel like I've gone on here for too long. I'm sorry. Is there anything? Did I miss anything?
Oh, no. You're absolutely doing fabulous. I'm letting you, say what you need to say there because, first of all, obviously you have a great passion for this. And just like I said at the very beginning of the show, talking about history, even as it pertains to the educational system that we have employed and in place here, especially in the United States, in our history books about even who discovered America, et cetera, and so forth, all that stuff. They know that they're wrong. They don't change the books. So what we have to do is we have to continue our journey and our quest to find out really what the truth is. And by you coming on, Robert, and sharing the information that you're sharing and saying, look, when I first wrote the Terra Papers, it was incorrect because I hadn't had all my information yet. Because the more you learn, the more that you study, the more that you research, the more that you do all of this, your understanding widens and deepens and changes, just like everybody else's should be as well. We need to constantly stretch ourselves. What I believed yesterday, I may not believe today because I had found new information. And, or it may not be true for me because I have different information. And that's really what this is about, is sharing with people the idea that there is a lot more information out there. And the information that you bring comes from different sources than most people, have access to or privy to, or certainly have not done half the research or devoted as much time to it. So I absolutely love what you're saying. I absolutely love it. I think it's fabulous.
Well, thank you. And I also, as I said earlier, I do, and I have always looked to science and astronomy and physics and to find out if there is what we would call real world or scientific support for what I am saying. And it's astounding. It's absolutely amazing how much it does support what these ancient legends say. I would invite people to go to my website and take a look at some of the biological facts about humankind. And I list on there, the size of the embryo and what happens at conception, and that specifically shows that all men are altered females. Every single human being began as a female. Were it not for a bath of testosterone, they would remain and become females. It's why men have nipples. It's why men behave in some of the ways that they do, because they are altered females. But, go to my website and take a look. There's science information there. And,
I posted that link, too, by the way, for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There is, every day something happens. And for the last several years, since 2003, a little over, 12 years ago now? 11 years ago, when I started to work with these elders, and they started to give me these pieces from various parts of the globe on these ancient legends, and it's specifically the ancient language, I thought, holy cow, this is amazing. The essence of where I was going was correct, but my focus was masculine. It was male, and I was wrong. And so I learn every day, and at the end of the program, I would like to make, with your permission, an announcement on the Terra Papers and what we're going to do with that. But, I think it is so important to let women know that ultimately, and I know it sounds like I'm overreaching, but ultimately life in this universe, life in this galaxy, life in this solar system is based upon a woman. Women have magic, they have power, they have a very natural ability. I mean, men are afraid of women because somehow a woman always knows. You're not going to get away with it with a woman. That's because there is a natural, innate ability to connect with something that is far beyond their own physical existence. Women know. But unfortunately, they've been hammered into believing that they have to have a man in their life to give them some sort of value. They have to have a family, and they have to nurture and all this. So the point is, this universe, this galaxy, the solar system, and this life is about women. We are all women, ultimately, in one form or another. I am an altered female, an altered woman. That doesn't diminish in any way the accomplishments that I've made and those things that I do. It doesn't stop me from climbing up the cliff faces. It doesn't stop me from running in 110-degree weather. I'm still the same person, but my ancestry is female. I have star ancestors who are female star women, and I am extremely proud of that. When, I know you're going to break here in a moment, and I do want to talk about one of the prime examples of a woman, a figure in ancient history, who was magical, and she had tremendous powers, and she had these abilities, but she became, men turned into her, they demonized her. They turned her into a demon, a goddess of evil, a goddess of terrible things, demons and all that. And unfortunately, some of the books that have been written about this woman, her name is Lilith, some of the things that have been written about her have been enhanced and they've been built upon, and those stories are inaccurate. Now, Lilith is a phenomenal being, a phenomenal female, and there are some very important things that she has done and contributes. But I would like to, probably at this point in the next time period, is to say, look, this is the reality of Lilith. You're going to have to go back beyond 1500, 1200, 800 AD. There's a lot more information about her, and I'm going to tell you, she is not who you think she is. But
well, I'm excited about that. Let's do this. We've got about 12 minutes, but what I want to do is there's a question that came in for you, and I want to get it answered so that we don't get too far down the show and forget that this question came in. So I'll read the entire question and then I'll let you answer it. The story of Adam and Eve is bastardized story. Eve is the receptive heart side of humans, and the mind will lead you astray if you sever the heart connection. And Adam is the mind part of the humans. What do you think of this idea?
Okay, let me make sure I understand it. The individual who sent the email is basically saying that Eve represents the heart and Adam represents the mind, and that they have to work together essentially to accomplish whatever we're supposed to accomplish. Would that be fair?
What I'm thinking is, I think the question is a little bit incomplete, but it was really about, what do you think about the concept that Eve would be the heart connection and Adam would be the mind connection? That concept in and of itself.
Okay. If what I am hearing is that man focuses on science and reality and physics, and woman spends more time on her heart and feeling and emotion, I would say that is probably true if that's what is being conveyed. But again, from the history and I'm going to use the word science that I am presenting, a woman is heart and mind. A male is a woman with heart and mind. So, see, what I think the difference is, and one of the things I'm trying to undo, is we have had thousands and thousands of years of culture, religion, of laws and institutions that are designed to do one thing. This is a woman, this is her definition, this is a man, this is his definition. And this question sort of does the same thing. We're trying to pigeonhole women as this and men as that. Now, as a result of the institutions and cultures of the world, that's probably true. However, in its earliest sense, men and women were both heart and they were both mind. And yes, they had to work together. But this division of male and female is the result of thousands of years of being programmed to think there is an absolute difference and one can't do this and one can't do that. Men can't cry and women can't be aggressive. I had an email from a woman who said, well, if all men are altered women, then why is there war? And why are there, men who go out there and they kill serial killers and murderers and they take out children and elder women and elder men? But that's not the point. This assumes that all women are kind and generous and benevolent and won't be aggressive, and that all men are aggressive and they're nasty and they're vile and all that, and that's not the case. In military training long ago when they started working with terrorists, and what do you do when you confront terrorists? One of the first things that we learned was, when you confront terrorists, and I know this is going to sound harsh, but it was a very simple rule: kill the women first. That was because women were much more devoted to whatever position they were holding. They were much more dedicated, and they would go through all the way to the end, even in giving up their lives, whereas men would go, okay, whoa, wait a minute, maybe better if I surrendered and, fought again at some other point. And so, are we to believe that women cannot be aggressive? Are we to believe that women aren't going to kill their own children, that women aren't going to betray other women, that women won't be conniving and commit fraud and con? And see, you can't divide male and female and say this is a masculine attribute, this is a feminine attribute. This is what is called a human attribute. There are men and women who kill their kids. There are men and women who kill elders, seniors, and who commit fraud and crime. They are. We are the result of thousands of years of society's programming, and what I am trying to say is, look, let it go. That doesn't work. One of the things that I'm so amazed at is that recently there was an article, and I'm quite familiar with the actual, what prompted the article on the Internet on CNN, about 18% of Hispanics are now what they call irreligious. They don't believe in God. They're not agnostic. They just don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe in what they were brought up with. Now, Latin America, Hispanics have generally, you talk Hispanic, you know that they're thinking about Catholicism and God and the church, and it's a very, very big part of their lives. Yet 1 in 5 is now saying this doesn't work. If you look at the statistics about Christians and the various denominations, they don't work. People are going, hey, this isn't working. And I believe that's why the elder said, Robert, let's give it a shot now. Because maybe people are ready to hear that this old stuff isn't working. We need some new stuff, and not a religion, but a way that is freedom from religion, that encourages you to go after your fire. It encourages you to use your mind. It encourages you to travel and to stop, let go of the thou shalt not and the 10 Commandments and all that. Let it go. And part of what I'm trying to do with this one simple example, how many people, if they went to St. Peter and in the afterlife, and the question was, true or false, Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden, how many would have said yes? And they would have failed. And that's my point. So if you're going to profess to be any particular religion or faith or denomination, then you better adhere to the actual words and stop saying this is what he meant and this is what was intended and, oh, no, this is the way. I'm sorry. Let it go. So there are good things in the Bible, but so much of it is designed to keep women in their place, and this chapter 3 verses 23 and 24 is evidence. Ladies, let it go. You're not at fault. You're not responsible. Original sin wasn't yours. It's a fabrication designed to keep you in your place, and they're wrong.
I agree. And, even as a kid, it was one of those things that never set well with me, even though I didn't truly understand it. But there was a knowing that I was like, that just doesn't seem right. I just couldn't buy that. I just could not buy into it. And then, the older I got, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And,
I
do.
Go ahead.
I do get a lot of emails from women who are saying, wow, that makes a lot of sense. It never worked for him. But I have to tell you, I get perhaps not as many, but there are men who are saying, you're right, this doesn't make any sense. It didn't work for me. I am very fortunate. I mean, actually, here in July, I'm going to take some people out on one of my journeys to one of the ruins. And there's a gentleman there who is going to bring his daughter because he says, this is the kind of stuff that she needs to hear. And he agrees 100% with what I'm saying. And there are men out there who I actually think some of them are afraid to say, wow, you know what, this isn't working out here. And I think, thank you, women.
Where we're at. We're at the break time. And when we come back, Robert, we've got some more information. So all of you, stay with us, and we'll be back right after the commercial break. Talk to you in a little bit. Everyone, good evening. Again, another Friday night. We're halfway through. That first hour just flew by. My guest tonight is Robert Morningsky. Co-hosting and engineering with me tonight is JP. Before I forget, I want to tell everyone to have a wonderful 4th of July because next Friday night is the 4th of July, and I'm going to be digging some special show out of my archive to replay on the 4th of July. And then the following week I return with Nick Redfern on the following Friday, which will be the July 11th. And then somewhere in between there, myself and JP will be getting with Robert, and we're going to be setting up another couple of shows with Robert, and I'll be sending out information in a newsletter as to when all of that will take place, where you can find the shows at, as well as any other information as far as the topics that we might be covering. So I wanted to let everyone know, so please have a very safe and happy 4th of July if I run out of time before the end of the show tonight. And you'll see me back here on July 11th for another live show again with Nick Redfern. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Robert, I apologize for taking up that time, but I wanted to make sure everyone knew what was going on as far as the shows were concerned and information. So, again, welcome back. It's wonderful to have you here. And I know you had something that you wanted to kind of go through, which is about the Lilith at the beginning of this hour. But if you have anything else that you would like to kind of go into first, we're all ears.
Well, again, thank you very much for letting me join you and JP. And I have a sense and that I would like to apologize to you and to JP and your listeners because I get so caught up in this domination of women, this putting women down. Like I get so worked up that, I apologize if it sounded like I was ranting. I can only say that it's a topic that consumes me. It is so important to me so I'm so thankful for the elders that they've given me the information that supports what I have been trying to do. There is a hidden history, a deliberately hidden history of our world, and it's about women. And so to all of you, my apologies if I seem to have gotten worked up. I did, and perhaps I should temper it to a degree. But at any rate, I would, before the end of the program, I would like to talk about the Terra Papers.
Yes.
Just a few days ago, less than a week ago, I had meetings with the elders, and we talked about different things. And I'll tell you what, why don't I do that right now, get
Sure.
that out of the way, and because I want to make sure. The Terra Papers I wrote when I was in university, years and years ago, and I got in a lot of trouble in writing this thesis. My professor was very upset because this hidden history it didn't work for him. I had studied Sumerian, Egyptian legends, Mesopotamian, Babylonian, and he said, no, this doesn't work. And I was actually, at that time, I was taking a double major. I have a major in religion and a major in mathematics. And I know that sounds like a very, very diverse, they shouldn't fit, but in fact they do. They're both an exercise of the mind, and they're both about making a point and trying to prove it. Is there evidence? And I wrote the Terra Papers, and he didn't like it. Essentially, I was not going to get my major in religion, but fortunately, and as it turns out, a female professor stepped forward and said, look, just because he got the pieces, and put together a different picture than you and I would normally do, doesn't mean he's wrong. So, thankfully, this professor allowed me to get my degree in religion. But the Terra Papers, they pretty much, I knew no one was going to listen, especially way back then. They weren't going to listen. And in 1991, I was touring in Australia, and I was approached by a gentleman, Duncan Rhodes. He was the publisher for a new magazine, Nexus Magazine, and he came and he did an interview. He asked me about star beings, and I told him the story of my grandfather, told him the Star Elder story. And as it turned out, I was spending the better part of 3 years in Australia, and I did like 16 cities in 21 days on one of my tours. And people started asking about the star beings and the Star Elder, and so I put together a very brief synopsis, something I called the Terra Papers, which was just a very, very brief overview of my thesis. And it took off. When I got back to the United States, there was already, people waiting and said, come and do this conference, talk about the star beings and the Terra Papers and that. And I did, but one of the problems was that I thought, well, I'll go on the speaker circuit, do these conferences, and I would contact some of the more prominent speakers, and I'm sure you'd recognize them if I said their name, but I said, okay, look, this is what I found. What did you find? Let's work together. And so I would send information out to other speakers, and the next thing you know, I would be at a conference, and guess what? There's my information that they are putting out there as if they were the ones that did it. And so I finally got just very upset and said, I'm just not going to share anymore because they only want, to be famous, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. And finally in 2003, I was in Switzerland, and I was approached by this gentleman who put me in touch with the elders. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to appear in public anymore. And so I quit. I didn't do any more appearances. 2003, I pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth. No more speaking engagements and the like. And wouldn't you know, some of these very same speakers put Terra Papers on the Internet. But what they put on the Internet, while the essence of the story was relatively accurate, there were edits, there were alterations, there were deletions, there were additions that I never made. They were never in my original little synopsis. And so I caution people, I appreciate that, thank you for the compliments. The essence of the Terra Papers is there. However, there are so many details that have been altered. What you will find on the Internet is not mine. I've also seen a terrapapers.com. That is not mine. There are people who are speakers on the Terra Papers. They're wrong. I said earlier in this program, what I had created so many, many years ago, including the synopsis, is in error. And so I keep getting asked, when are you going to do this? When you correct it, fix it? And I was speaking with the elders and saying, look, what is more important to me is the lost history of womankind and not so much the Terra Papers. On the other hand, they too heard my early lectures on the Terra Papers and said, well, it fits in. I said, I know, but what is more important to me are your stories and your wisdom as opposed to what I may have written in a thesis so long, long ago. So we spent the last week, and I am going to redo the trilogy that I am working on, The Lost History of Womankind, and I'm going to add to it pieces of the Terra Papers that I wrote so long ago and what I have been updating for the past so many years. So ultimately, The Lost History of Womankind is going to be Terra, The Lost History of Womankind. I am going to address the topics that were in my thesis, the updated information, and I'm going to present it as a trilogy. Which means, the Terra Papers updated trilogy, The Lost History of Womankind, we are working on it now. I have, as I said before, 15,000 pages of data to put together and produce a trilogy. In fact, I don't think it's going to be a trilogy because there's so much information that remains. But here's what has happened, okay?
Okay.
By agreement with my elders, we are going to produce a 3-part Terra Papers update, Terra, the Lost History of Womankind. What this means is that our first book, the one that we just published, Book 1, The Lost History of Womankind, it's not going to be reprinted again. Essentially, if you have a copy, it is now a collector's item. You're not going to find it again. Now, there will be, some of the data will remain, but I am going to edit it. I am going to add things that will update it and bring in the Terra Papers content. So, Book 1 is going to be Terra, the History in the Stars of Womankind. Book 2 is going to be How It All Began, The Birth of God, The Lost History of Womankind. And Book 3, the working title, is God's Messengers. So if you have a book already, it is a collector's item. It's not going to happen again. And I promise you, like I said before, one of the publishers who I approached said, too much data, too much information.
Right.
There are just a handful of books that I have left. If you want one, it's a collector's edition after these are gone. I'm not going to do it again. But we are targeting September 1 for the release of Book 1, Terra, the History in the Stars. Book 2 should follow almost immediately after because it will be based heavily on the book that we have already provided. Book 3, probably towards the end of the year, but Terra Papers updated. Terra, the Lost History of Womankind. We're shooting for a September 1 release date. The Lost History of Womankind that we have now, that book will no longer be printed. It's a collector's item. Hang on to it, guys. There's data in there, information, and even clues as to what we're going to put in the Terra Papers. So,
Ooh, I got mine.
Hang on to it. It's now a collector's item. I'm not going to reprint it. There are a handful left, first come, first serve. Also, in conjunction with this, on July 12th and 13th, that's, about 2-3 weeks away, I posted on my website and I am announcing I am going to be going to some ruins in northern Arizona on Saturday the 12th. I am targeting Bell Rock in Sedona on Sunday the 13th. I'm going to perform an honoring. It is open to those individuals who would like to go. Now, I am not asking for a fee. There is no charge. If you can make a donation, I appreciate it. It will go to the elders. But part of what I want to do is to begin to show individuals, particularly women, the Udugan ceremony, the honorings. And I also want to talk to those individuals who do show up. I want to ask them questions about things that I have not spoken of, things that are going to be in Book 2 and Book 3. I would like to get their guidance on how do you think this is going to play in the public domain. I've already agreed with the elders and powers that be. There are some topics that I will not touch. It just is better if I don't. But go to the website if you're interested, and certainly, and I appreciate that it's probably too soon, but Ms. Rebecca and JP, you're welcome. This will not be the only time. July 12th and 13th, if you're interested, send me an email. There's no fee, just show up.
Okay.
And we'll be going to northern Arizona to some ruins and to Sedona and probably Bell Rock. But I also want to have conversations. So those two announcements, I wanted to make sure that I get those out. So, and I thank you again, Rebecca and JP, for allowing me the time, and thank you. And I hope, somewhere down the road that I do get to see the two of you, whether you come out here or maybe somewhere down the road, I'll find my way over to across the ocean and get to Europe. It's been a while since I've been there.
Yay!
Okay. With your permission, the figure of Lilith. And I know that you told me that there are listeners who want to call in their questions. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Lilith. There is so much about her, but please stop me because I could go on and on for hours, but please stop me and allow plenty of time for your listeners. I always appreciate their questions because they make me think, and you know. So at any rate, very quickly, Lilith. In a nutshell, Lilith is a bad person. The bottom line story, the one that I think most everybody knows, is that Lilith was supposedly the first wife of Adam. But Lilith would not yield to what we would call the missionary position. She wanted to get on top during intimacy, okay? And Adam said, no way, not a chance. So Lilith got angry because she couldn't be on top. But here's the interesting part. According to this story, she calls out Jehovah's name. 2 wings mysteriously appear on her back, and she flies away. Okay, so if she's bad, why by calling out Jehovah's name did she get 2 wings? Well, turns out, according to the story, she was so angry at Adam, and by extension all men. Lilith then, she would begin to stalk men. She would seduce them, and she would have her own way with them. Then she would drain their life with a final kiss. And actually, in a few stories that I've heard, she actually devoured them, much like a black widow, okay? And her anger actually went far beyond men. She went after their children, males and females. She was a demon. She was a devil. She was a night creature. In fact, in Hebrew, the word for Lilith is night creature. And if you see images of Lilith, probably the most famous, the most prominent one, is where she is standing with 2 owls on either side, and she has these taloned feet, but she's quite naked, and she's bad, okay? In the Jewish Talmud, Lilith is described as a demon, and she has long hair, and she has wings. In the Middle Ages, the Christian church, the monks and the fathers and the church fathers, they said that she was the mother of these demon women called the succubi. The succubi attacked men in the middle of the night, just like their ancestor, just like Lilith. They attacked the men in the middle of the night, and they had sexual relations with them. And then when they were done, they drained the bodies and the souls of their men. That's how vicious and evil they were, okay? Men who survived often lived a life of great despair and torture. They couldn't live like a man anymore. They were just not men anymore. In fact, I remember reading about Christian monks who often slept with a crucifix over their private parts. This protected them from Lilith and the succubi, Lilith the night hag. And there is, however, an interesting story. I remember that there are some early Christian father stories that said that if a man had a sexual union with Lilith specifically, quote, he would as best as I remember the quote, he would no longer be satisfied with the love of a mortal woman. That's how bad she was. I mean, you have intimacy with Lilith, you're never going back to a mortal woman. There's a saying in there somewhere. There is a book called The Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible. It says that Lilith cannot have children. However, sometimes because there was something inside her, this innate desire to suckle children, that she would sneak in and she would suckle a child, but only poison would come for her breast. Okay. Here's a quote. I actually wrote this one down. The Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible says that Lilith, quote, can be considered a young girl who has not reached maturity and thus has to stroll about ceaselessly in search of male companions. Sexually unfulfilled, she is the perpetual seductress of men. So this is a sex-obsessed woman, demonic. She has to have her way when she has intimacy with men. Now, how evil is that? Ladies, if you want your way, you're bad. All right? So, now, let me correct a few things here. Lilith is only mentioned one time in the Bible. It's in the book of Isaiah, I believe, 33 or 34, okay? And this whole chapter talks about the land of Edom, E-D-O-M. And God, the Lord, is very upset with Edom because they have been disobedient. They're not listening to his words, okay? And in chapter, I'm pretty sure it's 34. In chapter 34, God says he's going to wreak his vengeance on the land of Edom. And once he does this, the only thing that will be left in that land are the terrible demons and vultures and owls and Lilith. So, according to chapter 34 Isaiah, Lilith lived in the land of Edom. Okay? And ultimately, what the legends say is that, she was a very, very bad woman. Now, I'm going to back up here for a second. Number one, the first time that any Jewish images that we can find in history, when I'm looking at scrolls, papyrus rolls, I'm looking at paintings, sculptures, the first time that Lilith appears as a demon is in about 600 B.C. Now, that's 600 years before the time of Jesus, okay? And her imagery is that of an owl. She's not a woman with talons. She is not this evil, demonic, winged, long-haired creature. She is portrayed as an owl, okay? The name Lilith means night hag and or night owl. That is the earliest time in any sort of Bible-related works that Lilith appears at all, period, okay? The first time that Lilith appears or has been described as being the first wife of Adam, the first time it appears is in a very small Jewish book called the Alphabet of Ben Sirah, S-I-R-A. The Alphabet of Ben Sirah is actually, it's this little book, and it's got 22 proverbs in Aramaic, 22 proverbs in Hebrew. And essentially they both say, speak about thou shalt and thou shalt not and all that. However, the book, the Alphabet of Ben Sirah, describing Lilith as the first wife of Adam, it does not appear until somewhere around 800 A.D. 800 A.D., first time. Again, this isn't part of the early church fathers in Jesus' time or the time of Moses or any of the early Bible patriarchs. It isn't until 800 years after Jesus that this story appears as her, as the first wife of Adam. Therefore, this story is suspect. However, I suspect there were some church fathers that are trying to prevent women from saying, hey, we have to have intimacy the way we want it. We want to have a chance to be on top. And in 800 A.D., some church fathers go, no, we can't do that. We got to come up with a story. Aha, let's do this. She was the first wife of Adam. She wanted on top. That was bad. She became a demon. She became evil. So let's put this story out there. You have to have a reason to control women even during times of intimacy, okay? So I could go into the linguistics of Lilith and her name and all that. For those of you who are familiar with the Terra Papers or know anything about Sumerian Mesopotamian history, the name Lilith is based on the root L-Y-L, Lil, okay? And I'm going to give you this part. Lil, the root for Lilith, entry 3915 in the New Strong's Dictionary of Bible Words, 3915. The word Lil, the root of the name Lilith, means a twist away of the light. That is what scholars for the last couple of thousand years, that's the definition they came with. Now, how do you twist away the light? I think if you stretch your imagination what could twisting be that Lilith wanted for twisting away the light? Okay? Well, the New Strong Scholars say that Lil means to twist away the light, therefore it means night. Okay? That's what it means. So I take a look at the words twist and all that, and I found several words, Bible words, and when you look up the word twist in the dictionary, you find several words, and essentially they all give this